Hello and welcome to the Jackcast, your Swansea City podcast. I'm your host, Steve Carroll. Joining me this week, we've decided to get the band back together and the prodigal son has returned. Matt, how are you? I know obviously I see you every week anyway because you stand next to me, but it's good to have you back on.
Oh, cheers. I don't think I've ever had such a nice intro, so I might have to stay off for another couple of months now so I get one again.
Well, you might want to stay off for a couple of months here because I referred to last week as handing Andy Gordon a hospital pass, and I feel like I might be doing similar to you here. It's what can we say? There's a lot to discuss again. We have what was a terrible result at Norwich to look back on. We've I would say the general situation of what's going on here, the manager's position. The board, obviously, a preview of the weekend's game where Coventry visit, and but we better start with something else to do with Coventry, haven't we? And the news that it sounds like our captain is pretty much signed for Coventry, isn't he? Matt Grimes is off. I mean, when I first heard this, I couldn't believe it, really. I mean, it was quite shocking, wasn't it? I mean, you must have been the same.
Yeah, it was weird. I think it was the utter shock of it because you just don't see something like that happening, do you? You'd first hear that someone was interested or someone tabled. No, wait. The first way hearing of it is he's going. This is happening. It's not a case of rumours that Coventry are interested in. It kind of pretty much came from the start as Coventry have made several bids. Matt Grimes wants to go. And that's the first we got publicly of that information, which took everyone by surprise and pretty much turned Swansea City's fan base into a complete meltdown.
Yeah, I mean, the way I often read things these days is, football isn't, how can I put this? If a bid comes in for a player or a manager or something like that, I often think that, they already know that player or manager is up for going. But there's probably already been discussions and stuff like that, really. So, a lot of people, I think, thought that this wasn't going to happen, and it was they were chancing their arm, really. But I mean, I didn't read it like that. I actually thought, well, this for some reason here, he wants to go, doesn't he? I mean, it's as you say, just surprising. It seems to have completely come out of the blue, and obviously he's only just got to the stage where he's celebrating 10 years here. I mean, he's had chances to go previously, or certainly chances to run his contract down, doesn't he? I remember when Russell Martin was sure he was into his last season. I was doing Martin's first year, and I thought, well, he's probably going to go on a free year, take the chance. But then he signed a new contract, quite a long one, and obviously signed another one since then. And I think when he signed the last contract, I just thought, well, he seems happy to see his days out here because obviously at that point Martin had gone. We knew he was a big fan and he would maybe consider taking him to Southampton, and obviously that didn't come to fruition. So yeah, it just seems really surprising, doesn't it? And it's quite. Obviously there must be a wage rise involved, as there often is. But I mean, it's a sideways move, isn't it? I mean, you put a thing on Twitter about it, didn't you? Like, I can't remember exactly how you worded it. I think you probably do, but I must admit I did laugh.
Yeah, Grimes opting to move sideways felt quite apt. But yeah, I think with that, it speaks volumes as well. It's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but it speaks volumes of the direction of the two clubs and the financial situation of the two clubs as well. Whether you think he's left for ambition or you think he's left for money, either way, Coventry are seemingly a club that wants to push for promotion, has things in place to be able to do so, and finances to back it. So either way, you're looking at it as he thinks the grass is greener there. So it's a damning indictment of Swans because we are only a few places and I think 4 points behind them as it stands in the table. So yeah, in that blatant fashion, it is a sideways move. But whether he's looking at setting up his family finances for when he retires, or he's looking at the chance of getting to play in the Premier League, doesn't see that happening with us imminently, and we will not know what's gone on behind the scenes to trigger this. But going back to something you said earlier about the bids coming in, yeah, I think a lot of football fans now understand that the bids tend to be the latter stages of discussions. You've already spoken, agents will have spoken, players will have been briefed by their agent, and listen, so-and-so are interested in you. How do we feel about it? This is what they're thinking. And the clubs then, what are the chances of so-and-so being released? He's interested in the move. And then finally then, once you think there's some go in that, you table a bid, don't you? And I don't think it's nowadays like Football Manager where you just find a player and you go, let's put a bid in. Now people talk about the players, their families, the settling in the area, the kids and stuff like that, and everything is a package. So yeah, it's something that's probably been bubbling under the surface for a little while, and now it's come to light, and we're getting to see the tail end of it right at the end of a transfer window.
Yeah, I mean, it's the timing's not ideal at all, is it? Really? I mean, obviously we've we've been in a situation here where we've needed to strengthen really, and you worry we could end up at the end of this window being weaker than when we started. So
isn't this like every window though? I mean, I'm sick of people defending the board, this board, the previous regime, whatever it is, about it'll come out in the 3rd of Feb now that we couldn't get a certain deal over the line, or so-and-so changed their terms at the last minute. It's all bullshit. Like, we are the worst, I'm sure, one of the worst out of the 92 at getting things over the line at a price that works for this club. And I think that's the issue we've got. If we want to get someone, we end up just trying, putting silly contracts out because we can't negotiate. We haven't got now a football man in that boardroom making those calls. And that is a massive, massive problem for the future of this club.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was going to come to that later, to be honest with you. But I mean, we just can't keep ending these windows weaker. I mean, you look at it now. Grimes goes, and then midfield. I would say we probably needed to strengthen anyway because Joe Allen's fitness is not what we need it to be. Is it? He can be a bit part player, but I mean, his fitness doesn't allow him really to be a starter. I mean, Jay Fulton isn't somebody that we're a big fan of. I mean, we've got to bring somebody in, haven't we? I mean, it's this is now a problem, and it's the truth is late in the day. I do appreciate the club may have been caught out slightly by this, but the problem I'm now looking at, I didn't really want us to go down the loan route because it's not ideal. But if I'm honest, I think now we probably have to, don't we? If it comes to it, because I mean, not strengthening the midfield for the rest of the season could cause us a real problem. I think. I mean, I don't think relegation is 100% out of the question here. We're 7 points above it. I would certainly say that we're in a reasonable position to avoid it, but I do worry that losing Grimes could really upset us here, and it could send us down the table. So we've got to act, haven't we?
The issue I've got here, and it's as big of a central issue for me, is we have developed this, I don't know, this fantasized idea of what the Swansea way is, okay? We've done this for a couple of years now, where we've thought this is the Swansea way. It basically builds absolutely everything through one man, and that man looks like he's about to leave the club. I think tactically it's naive, it's poor, and listen, he's been captain over the slow demise of this club over the past 4 or 5 years. I'm not blaming him for that, but I am saying the club has got weaker and dropped more and more whilst we've had this situation where everything has to go through Matt Grimes. That does mean that he has more touches than any other player, probably double than some players on the pitch at that time. When you take him out of that now, we've got a massive issue, not just to replace the body on the pitch, but we actually need to change the whole way we play. And that might not even be a negative, because I think what we have with Matt Grimes, captain, fantastic, or whatever, in the middle of the park there, everything going through him, he dictates the play, sideways, backwards, sideways again, tries a forward one, comes back to him. We can never counter teams. We can never hit teams on the break. And it infuriates me watching the Swans that we can starve the opposition of possession for minutes at a time. 3-4 minutes, we can hold the ball and move it around. And then we lose it somewhere. And within 3 passes, bang, 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 they've got a clear sight of goal. And that's not them going long ball. That's not them lumping it over the top and running onto it. That's just direct, incisive, clinical play. And it's something that we should be able to do, but we're tactically not set up for it because we're petrified of not having all the possession all of the time. That's not what I consider to be the Swansea way. I don't consider Swansea way to be sideways, 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 and hope that two of the back four collapse so that we got a chance of goal, because otherwise they are just watching us in front of them all of the time. And I think from that, I don't think it's necessarily long-term a terrible thing for us to have to step away from, because in reality, it's not getting us progression. We're actually seeing this slow regression of the playing style and the results as a result of it. So where I see this at the moment is the massive issues at the club is an immediate issue. Long term, if we had everything else in place, I wouldn't necessarily see this as the absolute car crash that many fans do. But you look at it now, we've got a manager who we've spoken about when in person, Steve, we think is out of his depth. Okay, I think he's a lovely bloke. He seems to be really likable person, but he doesn't have answers. He can't change the game. He can't influence the game, and so his substitutions seem prescribed and not reacting to the moments in the game. We've got a chairman, which we'll come to later again, an issue there where he seems to want to handle everything himself, but not have a clue how to do anything. So he's running the show. It's a bit of a comedy show at the moment. And a squad that is reliant on one player. You could take any other player out of that team, and we do regularly take every other player out of that team, except for one, who's been an almost ever present since our relegation. That's now systemically a massive issue for us.
Yeah, it is, because that's the thing, as you say as well. He's, to be fair to Grimes, I mean, his fitness record is extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, he literally never ever misses a game, and that's, you know, because as we've talked about, Joe Allen, for example, has fitness issues, so you can't rely on him, can you? But Grimes is literally Mr. Reliable because his fitness is that good, and I think the timing is the real killer here. I mean, if you're going to go through a thing where you decide to change, if it was in the summer, it wouldn't be as bad. But I think my major concern really here is, right, you look at the last 18 months, we've made close to 30 signings. And you can count on one hand the ones that have been successful, really.
Yeah. Well,
so
Stu
regardless,
really, out the other day, Steve.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to look at that.
Yeah, that's right. Stuart James put it out, didn't he? And I suppose this is the key issue, really, is that if anyone who's even half decent leaves, they get replaced by someone worse. Yeah. And that's the thing. You can have, regardless of the money that we're going to get, and it doesn't sound like it's a brilliant deal, to be honest with you. Sounds like it's going to be in the ballpark of 3 million, whereas you think should really be worth more than that. I do understand that with resale value and stuff like that maybe we wouldn't get as much as you'd hope, but I can't have any faith in this lot replacing him in the way that they need to.
And I think that's a separate issue which compiles the misery, really, because I don't think leaving us with Jay Fulton playing every week is an indicator of how amazing Matt Grimes is. No, that's an indicator of how terrible we are at replacing players that leave this club. In another club, we'd be able to find a player that, a couple of players and find a little bit of a different shape there so that we're not so reliant on one player. I mean, what I don't understand is I think the fan base is a little bit hysterical at the moment over losing him. And on the face of it, don't get me wrong, you losing your club captain a couple of days before the window's shut is an absolute fucking joke. Okay, it's a ridiculous scenario.
It's like what it symbolises, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I completely sympathise with that view as well. And this is why I've been laughing at the board, kind of the situation which they seemingly allowing to occur here, which is he goes on the cheap because he doesn't fancy being here anymore. That is so amateurish. We should have a value and make the other club come to our value, but we seem to be hamstrung so much with PSR that the sheer thought of getting rid of one of our higher earners has got the board salivating. Now, we give him that contract. He didn't rob it from the club. We give it to him. So us not being able to afford it now, or looking at how on earth we do any business, is all on us. The actual Grimes leaving, when I look at it, I don't feel like it's going to necessarily long term say, oh God, do you remember the years where Matt Grimes was here? I don't feel it. Like, I mean, he's a set piece taker. Has never scored a free kick for us. We regularly don't beat the first man from corners. Look, he's not blessed with pace. He isn't a great tackler. Not always the best at tracking runners. Goals, assists are non-existent. But it's the fact that we've built ourselves to go through him so much, and every part of what this new Swansea way thing is Matt Grimes. Swansea way is Matt Grimes now. That's the best way probably to describe it. And I think one saying I like to come back to when they talk about the way we play is possession without purpose is nothing. And I think it might have been Russell Martin that said that, or maybe someone before him who coined that phrase as well. But it feels like, ironically, if it was Martin, because he was the worst for it. But the idea that we are built on this kind of laborious kind of sideways. And look, you're right. Okay, on the face of it, losing your captain is horrible, and you know, it's not a situation that any club should go through willingly, or unwillingly rather, and being forced upon them. Is he a great captain? I mean, look, I don't feel like he's necessarily one to rally the troops. I don't feel like he's a big voice on the pitch. And I feel like perhaps when I see us and I think of us having a soft underbelly, I think that comes back to, if we are winning a game, we are being battered. We're having to defend for our lives, clear balls off the line, head everything away, relying on our centre-halves to deal with everything in the box. But we can't stem the tide. That's not necessarily just the Matt Grimes thing. That's a managerial thing. That's using your head to slow the games down, gamesmanship, you know, all things like that. And likewise, when we're losing a game, we don't seem to give the opposition any problem at all to see that game out, because we will insist on keep going sideways, and they're going to watch us do that all day long. So yeah, I don't feel like he necessarily inspires that extra 5%. I don't think he's necessarily a great captain on the pitch. I liken it, Steve, to when Chris Coleman took over from Wales and he took the captain's armband off Aaron Ramsey and gave it to Ashley Williams. And that caused a stir at the time, because Ramsey was one of our best players, like Grimes, one of our most respected players, like Grimes. It didn't apparently do Wales much harm, did it? You know, we followed that up with Euro 2016, and you know, the rest is history. And Ramsey was so much better without the pressure of the captaincy as well. And I wonder if we've kind of put the weight of the world on Matt Grimes' shoulders, and that's why perhaps the Swansea way is now Matt Grimes, and they're synonymous with each other.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point of view, isn't it? I think from the way I'm looking at it is that, yes, I do think at times he does have his faults. I mean, free kicks are a big one. And, you know, I do actually think when it comes to playing forward passes, he he is more than talented enough at it. But I do think that he can be a little bit conservative at times. Not the only one, mind, by any stretch. But I do think we will miss him. I think that he's one of those players that when he's not there, and which obviously he won't be now, and we see who comes in, you will notice it quite a bit, really. I mean,
will we miss him though because he's that good, or will we miss him because his replacements are shit?
I mean, it's probably a little bit of both, isn't it, in some ways? I mean, but he has been a good player for us, very reliable, I would say. I don't think he's been our biggest issue, has he, over the last few years, if you know what I mean. It'd be hard to say that he should have had a spell out of the team. I would certainly say that much, if you know. And again, you could point that as being, you know, the lack of other options, maybe. But he certainly has deserved, you know, to have been in the side. But the timing of it is bad, isn't it? As we've said. But you know, the other thing I wanted to touch on is, like we've had this conversation off air. I mean, about him. A few people have said he'll go down as a legend. I mean, I've always put the bar as a lot higher for legends than a lot of people, and for me, he's not close to being a legend. He's someone that I've got a lot of respect for. He's been a good player for us. a great servant, no doubt, playing a lot of games. To be a legend, there's only for very few. We discussed it, didn't we? I think there's only a handful of legends in our lifetime, isn't there? I think for me, we're looking at Roger Freestone, Angel Rangel, Gary Monk, Ashley Williams, Alan Tate, Leon Britton, Roberto Martinez, Lee Trundle. For me, there aren't any other legends. I think, would you agree with that?
Yeah, completely. Someone called him a legend on Twitter the other day, and the best response I saw to it was someone saying in 20 years' time, nobody will mention the name Matt Grimes. In the same way, now that people talk about Leon, people talk about Trundle and stuff like that, and hark back to times when we watched them when we were growing up and stuff. No one's going to be remembering the 200 passes Matt Grimes made in a game. It's not necessarily, he's not an eye-catching. What I will say to you, and I will hold on to this, is he is a solid, reliable 7 out of 10 player, and every club needs them. They need someone you can rely upon to keep a steady ship, and he was being fantastic at that. But he's never a glitz and glamour player. He kind of keeps things ticking over, doesn't he? I don't think people are gonna talk about him in 15 years' time.
No, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, Leon was like that, obviously, but I think the thing is for Leon, when he first was here, he wasn't really like that. He was more of he would dribble with the ball, for example, wasn't he? He would make things happen. And obviously played a big part in us staying in the league. Never forget that. And then he was in that position then for a few years. Then he evolved into this more, holding midfield player, and obviously shone for us in 4 divisions, 500 appearances, really. So that's why he's in there. I mean, a lot of the others
as different in the sense of he was a little terrier as well, and I think people love to see that work rate. He used to harass and harangue anyone who had the ball. He would chase them down into any corner, slide in, win the ball back, and then he'd do the sensible thing, which is pass it off to someone else and let them build the attack. But he was a terrier and didn't give anyone a moment's peace. So I can see why fans were regularly on their feet, cheering, clapping, singing his name.
Yeah, he evolved as well, didn't he? As you say, I mean, he was a different type of player to start with, and it does come down to the success as well. I mean, Grimes he actually said this himself in an interview recently, didn't he? He's somebody that's played a lot of games rather than achieved huge success. But to be fair, that's not necessarily down to him. I mean, he was close to winning a promotion, as close as it gets, really, with losing the playoff final. But I think a lot of the legends have played their part in a lot of our successes, and then and I would look at Trundle as being a bit of an exception, really, in terms of because he wasn't here for as long, but Trundle leaves such a legacy because he gave so much joy, and without a doubt, from my point of view, he put so many people on the gate that started probably going regularly because of him. I would liken Trundle, for example, to a bit like what Eric Cantona was like for Man United. The big success maybe came like after he'd left, but no one really gave as much joy, if that makes sense, and probably still hasn't. So that's why Trundle really is a legend, because to be for 4 years and be one, you must have done something amazing, really, because a lot of it will always go on longevity, won't it? But that's why he is. So it's not meant as a dig at Grimes at all, because legend is they are for the elite. I mean, there's a lot of players here that maybe people would consider legends, some like Nathan Dyer, Wayne Routledge, for example, but they don't make the cut from my point of view, although they deserve a lot of credit and respect for their careers here, in the same way that Grimes deserves a lot of respect and credit. But he is not a legend by my stats. But
just as to go back to an earlier point, and just to before we move on from this section, if we made this transfer at the start of the summer transfer window, I think I'd be a lot happier with it, because I think then that gives us time to rethink how we're going to shape up for the new season, the recruitments we're going to come in to not replace Grimes, because I don't think we should be replacing Grimes. You're not going to find that player. They're in very short supply. But we need to think of how our team shape is going to look going forward without him in there, because it's built around him. As you said earlier on, spot on, Steve, really, really speaking, it's the timing of it, which is the biggest kicker.
Yeah, it's a massive thing, isn't it? And now I would say that the ownership, the chairman have been under a bit of pressure now recently because we're all just a little bit fed up, aren't we, of this general nonsense in terms of transfer windows. I mean, I had Andy on you last week. At that point, we didn't have a signing. We have brought in Hannes Delcra. I think that's how you say it at centre half. But let's look at it from the point of view of, right, we went into the Cardiff game. Now, I don't want to talk about that too much because it is unbearable to talk about. But with two centre halves that we were desperate for to play, but were they fully fit? I mean, there had to be doubt about it, even if they were in the end. I mean, I'm not convinced that they were, but they played, didn't they? And I mean, we were taking such a big risk with it. I mean, we didn't get away with it because the result went so badly, even though both played. But then it took a red card the following week, didn't it, for them to get a centre half in through the door. Now, I'm not saying that they weren't looking for these things, but there was this inability, wasn't there, to get things done. And I mean, we're now under real pressure to bring people in here, and our faith is very low, isn't it? That's the real concern here. And you look at it. I mean, the Supporters Trust have called them out this week, saying that they've called for fans forums and we're not having them. And it just feels like they're hiding and not enough is being done, isn't it? And if they don't get things done now by Monday, when that deadline is, I'm concerned, really concerned, and I'm sure you are too.
Well, you'd be like, Andy Coleman, pull the mask off. We know it's Jason Levian under there, because there's no difference then. You're out of the frying pan into the fire with them, because ultimately there were a lot of the fan base that were ecstatic over the change of ownership, and I was as delighted to get rid of the previous regime, but urged cautious optimism, because we still have got to assume that these new guys as well, we've got to hope that they bring something different or something better, but we had no evidence of it. And at the moment, all the evidence suggests that Coleman talks a good game, and he talks about boots on the ground and moving his family over here. I don't know if he's mentioned that one, in case I've broken any secrets there. But yeah, it all talks a great game, and I'm sure he's a lovely bloke. But the time to bring in a footballing brain was months and months ago. The next best time is right now. It needs to come, and right now, because Andy Coleman cannot be overseeing this. We're in the last couple of days of a window, and the Delcroix thing, as you say, I'm sorry. I'd even say we wouldn't have brought him in. I think that was let's get someone over the line now, purely because we did not have a second higher quality centre half to play after Darlin got red carded, and that is a shameful position for a championship club to be in. It's embarrassing, and I think from our point of view that accelerated that loan move. I think any business between now and the end of the window, I will view with a sense of, was this a panic? Was this urgency? Was this us scrambling to see who's available now? Because we haven't got the personnel in the boardroom to get this done professionally and get things over the line, which other clubs are able to do. And on board of January is a difficult window to operate in. I understand that, but yet it is a window. We should not be going into a transfer window 10 days, 2 weeks, however long it was, chasing Joe Lowe from Wickham. That conversation should have happened with Wickham months before the transfer window even opened. We spoke earlier in the podcast about bids come in towards the end of the negotiating period, when they already know the player wants to come, they already know the club are willing to sell, and then you start looking at figures and seeing what sort of numbers will be acceptable. We could have spoken to Wigan in November, in December, and said, look, we're interested in him, what's the score and stuff like that. It's naive to think this sort of stuff doesn't happen outside of transfer windows, in readiness to find out, get your feelers out there. And the fact that I don't care how long into January we were chasing him for, whether it was a week, whether it was 2 weeks, we have wasted time chasing a centre half that was never going to join this window. It's embarrassing. It's really, really amateurish.
That's the thing, isn't it? I look at Wickham and the position that they're in, and they're pushing for automatic promotion. I mean, for someone to sell a player at that stage, you just think, unless the offer's really good, it's not going to happen. I remember when I think you look, we're talking nearly 20 years ago now. When Lee Trundle was here, he was on fire in League One, and there was mentions of him potentially going in the January. And I was thinking to myself, like, well, we can't sell him because we're in a prime position to go up here. And I think Sheffield Wednesday had come in at some point, didn't they? And it was like, well, they're not doing great in the Championship. Like, if he goes there, then he could be swapping divisions, and obviously Jolo could have that situation, isn't it? I mean, you mentioned there about a scrambling round in January being a difficult month. I mean, there is a simple solution in some ways, isn't it? Make sure you're not going into January like thinking that you desperately need people. I mean, if you get a lot of stuff done in the summer, particularly like what you're looking for at that stage, then in January you're only needing the top up, aren't you? Whereas again, what we did was we left ourselves short, didn't we? And this is the result again. Now we're scrambling round, aren't we? And they've obviously had the Grimes curveball as well. I mean, it's not good, is it? It's amateurish, and we're a bit fed up with it, aren't we?
I'm not even going to have to find it because everyone listening to this podcast knows it happened. But there are articles out there where Andy Coleman references the fact that we make deadline day signings and stuff like that, and it is a pattern that they want to get out of and they need to move from, and they're working tirelessly and day and night to make sure that this club is in the best position going into the next transfer window. We've heard that from him 3 times at least, and we heard it from the previous regime before he came here. We keep hearing the same shit every time, and people keep buying it. And it's, at what point are you going to realise you're just being led up the garden path here? We're going to hear the same thing next week, by the way, folks. We're going to be told next week that wasn't a great window, but don't you worry, guys, because in the summer, we have got it nailed. And then come the summer, here we find ourselves again doing this sort of conversation with a couple of days left of the transfer window. Because we simply don't have the football brain there, the football nous, the contacts within the game, all the things you need to get business done succinctly, get it done professionally, make sure everything, the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And stop falling down this, oh, we would have got so-and-so, but this pulled out last minute. Or we were waiting to hear back from a club for their player, but they wanted to replace him first. Don't back yourself into these corners where you can't sign a player until it gets replaced because you're ending up not in control of your own destiny. It's bonkers, but we keep doing it. And you're going to hear it next week. Mark my words.
Yeah, you are. I mean, I've been at a few forums and stuff like that, and obviously, I had a one-on-one with Andy Coleman a little while back. I mean, I say a little while back, we're talking like towards the end of last season now, really. I mean, I remember one of the key things that he said in the forum was that judge me on what I do, not what I say. And I absolutely agree with that. With most things in life, you can't argue with it, can you? But the problem is now, what they're doing is it's not good enough. I don't think Andy's a bad guy at all, but there's severe doubts here on whether he's the right man to run the football club. I have to say that he isn't. This is the problem, isn't it? I think we really need like a Trevor Birch or a Julian Winter to come in and basically run the football inside of it, and Andy should go and do something else. That's what the problem is, isn't it? It's, what someone made me aware online the other day, right, of fan engagement plan for this season. There's meant to be 2 stadium fan forums, one outside SA1, 2 structured dialogue meetings, 1 online virtual forum, 1 junior Jacks forum. To the best of my knowledge, not one of those things has taken place.
No.
They're hiding, aren't they? Why are they hiding? Because the last forum was a car crash. This is the other problem as well, though. They're not doing a good job. And also, they won't face us, is what it feels like, isn't it? Because they know we'll pick them apart.
So the Trust made a good point. No point just having these when we win 2 games, 3 games, and we're like, right, okay, let's have a nice little chuckle in there with Kev Johns making jokes and stuff like that and have a nice happy atmosphere. Listen, we'd all love to be there because that means the club's on the up. But the reality is, this Trust suggested they need to actually put dates in before a ball is kicked and stick to them. So I don't care if we lost 4 on the bounce, but you said you would hold a fans forum on the 25th of October. Here's the 25th. You have to face up. And that's what needs to happen. And I thought their statement, it wasn't, it wasn't killer, but ultimately it said the right things. It called them out in the places it needed to call them out on. And, that's negative publicity for the club. It's what they want to skirt around. They don't want to have it. And they need it. They need it to stop being brushed under the carpet. They are hiding. And like I say, polish it as whatever you want. at the moment, they've proven themselves to be no better than the previous regime.
And this is the problem, isn't it? People are looking at it now and thinking that, what is the difference, unfortunately? And, I'm hoping that things do change. But right now, it's very concerning, isn't it? It's not good at all. And I mean, if we look at the actual football as well, that's not good either. I mean, Saturday we've gone to Norwich. I mean, we've taken some pastings on the road recently. I mean, we didn't start too badly. I didn't think there was some positives there, but how has it ended up 5-1? I mean, we've just collapsed at the end, haven't we? And it's a pattern here, isn't it? It just feels as if we're, at the heads drop if we could see a couple of goals. And well, where do you even start? This is the problem now, isn't it? And I think it's starting to wear a bit thin, isn't it?
Yeah, this goes back to what I was saying about Grimes as a captain. When you need to rally the troops, I just don't see it there. I don't see it. Saturday's a perfect example. The heads dropped. There was no G and N drawn up. There was no, getting people to run the extra yards and stuff. Some of the goals we conceded were, quite frankly, embarrassing. I'd be embarrassed if we were in League Two conceding those goals. We gave up. The harsh truth is we gave up. And we couldn't be asked. And everyone who travelled there deserves a full refund. And I don't say that ever, by the way. I don't think you'll ever catch me saying that, because I think you take what you get when you go to football matches. But I think there's a bare minimum every football fan should expect. And you couldn't get a pasting because we have had plenty of pastings. The one thing you can expect is your players to give what they can. If they're not good enough, or they're unlucky, or whatever, then that's part of being a football fan. But that was shameful. And that was embarrassing. And that wasn't very professional at all.
I know, that's the frustrating. There seems to be a bit of a lack of character here, doesn't it? I mean, I look at some of the goals and I think to myself, it's not actually a lack of quality as to why we're not stopping them. Like, I look at the first one, Timon, he's not running back hard enough, for example, is he? I mean, Kia's been guilty of similar things. And you're just thinking, guys, you've got to work harder, because the fact is, when you're not working that hard, you're making it look like you're not fussed on the manager. This is a problem, because we'll come on to that in a bit, I'm sure. But the bare minimum is you've got to work hard. And I think some of them, they weren't running hard enough, were they? Or is their fitness just not good enough? And if that's what the case is, again, you have to look at what we were doing in pre-season, for example. But you can't accept this light jogs of running back and stuff like that. I mean, you're letting your teammates down. You're letting all of us down. You've got to work harder, haven't you?
I've got different opinions on the wing backs. Josh Timon, and I noticed this very early on this season, and it hasn't changed my opinion since, blows out of his ass after half hour. Now, he has got a wicked left foot on him, and when he does get up the pitch, he's probably our best danger man from out wide, because he really does put a wicked ball in the box. But he hasn't got a game in him. He is so unfit. And watch out for it. You'll see. He just jogs around a lot of the time. Tracking back is a non-entity for him, and you'll notice now. Josh Key, I'm a little bit more sympathetic towards, because he's been told to play this inverted wing-back position, which doesn't suit his game, doesn't suit our game, and leaves this gaping hole behind him all the time. He's not good enough to do it. I don't know many players who are, to be honest with you, good enough to do it. And I refer back to what I said previously about Latabaudier. For a long time, I was looking at it thinking, he's rubbish, he's not good enough. And I've said the same about Josh Key. It's not good enough, simply put. And I'm looking at it now and thinking, the manager persists in playing a certain way, which doesn't play to his strengths at all. I got to look at the manager and how is he involved in all this. And yeah, I come back to the conclusion that Luke Williams isn't the answer. But there's problems from top to bottom at this club now.
It feels like that, doesn't it? I mean, you look, and I think I wrote about this a little while back. We would take our record against the top sides, right, was really bad, and there was a lot of pastings. I mean, you look at last year. I think Leeds gave us a pasting at home, for example, didn't they? We conceded a few up there. I think Leicester, they'd scored 6 against us in total. Obviously, Southampton scored 8 against us.
Yeah.
But what concerns me now is the likes of Portsmouth have scored 6 against us. Cardiff have obviously beaten us well. Norwich have now scored 5 against us on Saturday. It's like, we're now getting pastings from crap sides, if you know what I mean. So that shows how far it's regressing, really, and it can't go on like this, can it? I mean, like you said, there are questions on the manager, I think.
I was going to do my Mick McCarthy. It can. Yeah, I think really speaking, the one I like to talk about is the top six Pistons, because I feel like with them, that's a massive mentality issue. Again, I come back to the leadership, and I'd come back to whether it's management, captain, whatever. We lose a game against the top six before we've stepped on the pitch. I don't care what anyone says. We are shithouses. We do not believe we're good. We came out of the Southampton game after getting paced in, saying, "Oh, they showed their quality." Bollocks. You watch a cup game and you see a lower league team and they will give their all. We didn't. We were just turned over and waited to have our bellies tickled, because we don't believe in these games that we can get a result if we try. So we don't bother. We just go through the motions and we don't really lay a glove on them. The only exception I can think, which is the exception, is Leeds earlier this year, where I thought we actually showed some battling qualities, but it really is the exception. We still lost that game, of course, but having the vast majority of situations where we don't believe we can compete means we don't try, and that's unforgivable. As for the Pistons against the lower league, well, I just think our heads have dropped. We're woefully out of form. There's a lack of leaders, a lack of characters, and you want sometimes someone to walk around the pitch, get in everyone's face, and start demanding more and demanding better. And we don't. We just passively see a game through, and then roll on next week, because ultimately, everything we've seen, whether it be Hull away or at Christmas time, whether you look at Portsmouth away, Cardiff away, Southampton away, we just expect to go there and well, we're going to come under a bit of pressure. We've got nothing, no steel, no resolve. We just wait for it to happen. And if we do go behind in a game, we're not coming back because we've got no fight.
Yeah, I mean, the players have to take a certain amount of responsibility for this, without a doubt. And the manager obviously keeps digging them out over it, but he's got to look at himself as well, isn't he? And I mean, I always think lambasting your players in public, I mean, it's got to be a bit of a last resort, isn't it? But I mean, he's done it after the Sunderland game when we surrendered the 2-0 lead. He's done it after Cardiff. He's done it after Norwich. I'm thinking to myself, if you're a player, then, this isn't going to go down well, I don't think. I mean, he's got to be maybe looking at it the other way now of like, am I picking the wrong team? Am I picking the wrong tactics and stuff like that? Because you can't just keep pinning it on the players, can you? Even though they do have to step up.
Yeah, the manager is an immediate concern. And ironically, the chaos that's happened in the last week might actually give him a bit of reprieve. The spotlight was massively on him after the 5-1 on the weekend. And now all of a sudden, people are looking at the end of the transfer window. What are the board doing? People are looking at Matt Grimes. What's going on there? It might be a groundswell of support for him now, because they realise, his back's up against the wall. Everything's gone against us. But ultimately, you take away the drama of this week and you see it for what it is. This is a manager that was at very best naive to his response to the West Brom rumoured links. I don't buy it for a second that he was unaware of the rumours that were circling around Swansea. I'm sorry. This isn't 1950. You can be off all social media platforms, but you can guarantee your close friends are on them and they know what's going on. And he can't say for a whole week or so he was completely unaware of what was going on in the background. Nonsense for me. So that was maybe a tipping point where we stopped believing, stopped having faith. Whatever it was, you look at us now and we're like a rudderless ship. And Luke Williams has shown nothing to suggest he can turn a game around, let alone the sort of form we're in over a longer period. I think at the moment we're struggling to see which one of the people at this club we need to get rid of first. And we can't afford to do them all. We haven't got the time, we haven't got the resources, and we simply can't afford to fix all our issues. And that's why I say earlier on, we're in a mess from top to bottom, and Luke Williams needs to take a massive part of the responsibility of that.
Do you think his job is on the line? I mean, from my point of view, like I said, I don't think he's going to go before the transfer window shuts. And obviously, I do sympathise because as the problems we've discussed about leaving us short and all this type of thing, any manager would find that challenging. But it now does feel like he's making mistakes, doesn't it? But I mean, I think he's going to be all right for about another week or so. But I do wonder if the result goes badly Saturday, if that could be his final game in charge, or do you think that he might get a bit longer than that?
I think he may now because of this, and because of the transfer window not closing until, was it Monday? Monday evening?
Monday.
I think they might keep him in post so that anything that is being frantically tried to rush over the line, well, you don't want to put a spanner in the works by sacking your manager before that happens. You want to suggest that everything's rosy in this garden, don't you? So I think he may have a couple more games. Once all this drama subsides, Grimes invariably moves. The window's closed. He may get one last game then, and then if we lose that, the form is now over an extended period of time really, really poor. It's simply his relegation form. If we, I think he's out then, and we've got another issue. We've got another conversation about A, who do you want to come here? B, who could even have a remote hope of being successful here? And you're in a relegation dogfight. So, it brings up all different questions then of the sort of manager you're getting. Do you even want to appoint a manager at that point? Or do you want someone to steady the ship in a caretaker role? Because there's a lot of talk that if Williams goes, then Sheehan gets it, which, you make your own mind up how that looks at Swansea City. But if that is the reality, that's something that, we could see come to pass quite soon.
Yeah, it is, and that certainly isn't what I want to happen, if I'm honest with you. But we will soon see, won't we? Unbelievably, we play Coventry at the weekend, don't we? It's it's a funny game, football. I don't think a certain Mr. Grimes is going to play
on the pitch for either team.
No, I don't think so. I mean, mind you, I'm not convinced that our lot are actually going to put a clause in there. I think it might be more of a gentleman's agreement, but I don't know really. But
he won't want to play. He won't want to play. If it was up there, differently. But being down here, I don't think he'll want to be put in the hotbed of that and to make his debut in that environment where every touch might get booed, he might get harassed, and and I think basically they only have to hold off signing it until midday on Friday, and I think he can play anyway. So it might get announced on Friday perhaps, and then he features the week after. But I would be utterly gobsmacked if we see Matt Grimes on the football pitch on the weekend.
Yeah, I think that would be quite a big shock, wasn't it? I mean, we just discussed the manager's position, really. He needs to win in this game, doesn't he, to say the least? And we do in general, just to give us a bit of confidence and to feel slightly better, because it has been such a grim run. And I mean, the only way to try and make yourselves feel better is to win games, really, isn't it? And that's what we need.
This is a big one, and I'm not going to say it's as big as, but it reminds me somewhat of that Russell Martin when he called out the board, and then we played Birmingham just after the window closed. Now, it's not nearly as dramatic as that, because that was.
Well, you say that, but you don't know. There's another couple of days until the game happens, so
yeah, might well.
Things could turn that way now. Who knows what we will do next?
Exactly, and he has to protect his own brand as well, Luke Williams. So he may well turn around on deadline day and make a wild statement of how he's been let down, which doesn't necessarily make it untrue. I think he's very much been let down, but as a success of managers before him. But what I would say is a win on Saturday could be huge, because there's going to be a shift in opinion now, isn't there? There's going to be the club, the fans are going to be looking at the players that want to play for Swansea City out on the pitch. There may well be more support for them. There's going to be dog's abuse for the ownership, I should imagine.
I think there needs to be, doesn't it? I think this is the time now where we do have to make our voices heard, isn't it? I think that's without a doubt for me, because we are going to get to a stage here where crowds are going to drop even more. We're at the season ticket renewal point. Less people will be going again next season. I think we have to make our voices heard here, don't we? That we're furious about what's going on.
Well, people need to decide how they feel about it, because there is a real power in the voice of the Swansea fan base, as there is any fan base. But I'm sure on the weekend there will be songs about Andy Coleman, chants about Andy Coleman and his position at the club. And I expect those will grow and grow and grow. God forbid we go behind, because I think it'll get quite nasty. And we're going back to the days where, unfurling banners and waving dollar signs in the air and stuff like that. The reality of the situation is Swans fans need to decide where they are in their own mind with how things are going. And if they've had enough, then they are entitled to make their opinions known. And I do think that we're at the position now where if we don't say how we feel in the ground, whilst the world is watching, or the world, or the club owners are watching at least, then soon apathy will set in. And that will mean the crowds are getting lower and lower, and there just won't be anything then. Because the worst thing, I've always said to you, Steve, anger isn't the worst thing in football. Anger is a powerful emotion, and that can be harnessed for good. The worst thing in football is apathy, because once you've lost interest and the crowds go and nobody is that bothered about getting tonked at home anymore, that's when the football club dies. Not when people are screaming, shouting, angry, get out of our club. That's a club with passion and fire and desire for change. Once you lose that, you struggle to get it back. So I think Saturday might well bring a kind of anger. And I think it's an opportunity for those who do feel angry to make their opinions heard.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I would encourage anyone, if you do feel like that, to do so, because this is the chance to air your thoughts. And, there's no point. I often think there's not so much point moaning on social media about these things if you're not willing to back it up, really. So that's what I would say. If people are annoyed, make yourselves heard. I'm intending to, particularly because it's, this is very frustrating at the moment, and we're not seeing a lot of positivity, and you're thinking it's potentially going to get worse. But this is tough times, isn't it? Frustrating times as well.
I think, like I said, the biggest issue now is there isn't a quick fix. There isn't if only we can do that, we'll be better off. Because, we need a sporting director, a good sporting director as well, not just a job for the boys, yes man for the board. We need a proper one.
We need someone who knows what they're doing, don't we?
Yeah, and someone who's going to have final say. The biggest thing is they're going to have final say, and then, of course, working with a manager to identify who we actually target then in terms of putting bids in. But I don't want them to be led down the path from people who quite simply haven't got a clue what they're talking about in terms of the business of football, the footballing side of it. They can't have a say in it. They need to look at everything else. We need to have a budget set out. We need to have terms set out, and then give it to the people who know what they're doing to work within those constraints. But don't interfere, because that sporting director and our manager will live or die by the decisions that they make, and that should be right, and that's exactly how it should work. And that is what has to happen. To be fair, it appears as though an element of that was happening previously. It's unfortunate that we had Luton's cleaner, I think someone called him, making those decisions. But if we have a proper man making those decisions and identifying the targets, we've got half a chance. Then you look at, is our manager up to it? And then you look at, have we got a squad even capable of competing at this level? There's a lot that needs to be fixed at Swansea City. But as you said a little while ago, Steve, where do you start?
Yeah, it's a big job at the moment, isn't it? And the problem is we don't have any faith in the people that are making the decisions. So, yeah, it's this is I say this to people in work. It's meant to be a hobby, and it doesn't feel like it right now, does it?
No.
It's tough going, but yeah. Look, we need to get things done, don't we? It's not just the Grimes replacement that we need now this week. We do need a couple of other players as well. I mean, you're looking at, you mentioned Timon there, the fact that he's flagging, but him and Key have to play every game at the moment, don't they, really? Because the backup is so poor. And then you're looking in the wide positions, we need, we probably could do with strengthening there. Up front, we're not brilliant either, are we? It's, we need to bring people in, and they need to be good, and it needs to be obviously at a reasonable price. But with Grimes going, there should be some money available now. But do we have faith in them to spend it wisely? The answer's probably no, isn't it? But we have to hope that they do, don't we?
Yeah, and a good chairman can sniff someone who hasn't got a clue out a mile away, and we'll be taken for a ride, and we'll end up giving silly contracts to players that simply aren't good enough. When you look at some of the fees we've paid for absolute dross over the last few years, players that don't play for us anymore, players that aren't good enough, and you wonder why we're in such financial difficulties where we can't buy players before we sell, even though we've got a threadbare squad in places. Yeah, I don't know if I was going to suggest then a priority. Now it has to be getting those signings over the line, so we've got bodies in. Then it has to be, I guess, because we're so late in the window now. I'd have done this differently at the start of the window. I'd have got a sporting director in first, but then it has to be the manager situation, and then well in advance of any summer transfer activity, we need to have a sporting director in. But rumours that we're close to appointing one now it seems a bit laughable, given that he's got 3 days to work. If that's the case, it's an absolute joke. But yeah, we'll see what happens. But ultimately, the first and foremost, we need to make sure we don't end up this season being a League One club.
Yeah, because that isn't out of the question, is it, at this stage? And that would be that really would be a terrible, thing to happen. And it would feel like a lot of hard work has happened over the last however many years, really, to get us into a position where we were a more successful club. And it does feel like, to an extent, it's slowly been undone, doesn't it? And my fear is, even if we don't go down this year, are we going to go down in the next year or two anyway, unless we decide to stop what we're, the decisions that we're making, because we are going backwards, aren't we?
Yes. It's the old Premier League circle in the drain thing. We watched Cardiff do it in this division for the last 3 or 4 years. If we end up getting relegated before them jokers, then it's something seriously cancerous within this club, because they have been skirting around relegation for years, and somehow managed to escape really, really late on. Sometimes through no actions of their own, through points deductions for others. So yeah, but it could go that way. It really could. And the only way to stop the tide is to really put a lot of effort into a summer window is the only one you can really do it in. But it is about identifying those areas and making sure that business gets done. And don't find yourself towards deadline day, 3 weeks into the new season, scrambling around for loans and plugging gaps in positions to start games. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke, and we've hamstrung ourselves on contracts for players we're paying through the nose for. Sporting director, I've put third in my list of priorities, but he's long-term, he's the most important man by some distance.
Yeah, but it's just the fact you're only saying it's third, aren't you? Because of the current situation is so concerning, isn't it? Which says it all.
Yeah, I mean, timing means that we can't get, we can't get a significant workout with a sporting director now anyway. What we do need is bodies in through the door, and we do need to look at the manager situation if that continues to go down the same path. It might be a blessing, as I say, it might be a blessing for Luke Williams. He has to change the way we play now. The way we were playing was boring, it was turgid, it was sideways, we was too leaky, but not really creating a massive amount of scoring a great deal. It was the worst way of playing the game, really. It wasn't particularly entertaining. And I think we'll look at it and think, well, actually, in a really dark way, this could be a blessing in disguise, because something needed to change, and this Grimes situation is going to force that change upon us. I don't think Williams would have made that change himself.
Well, he absolutely wouldn't have made the change himself. I mean, we know that, but yeah, he's in a
we can't play the Grimes way without Grimes. I think that's the long and short of it, isn't it, Steve? I mean, we can't just put another player in there and say, right, you're Matt Grimes. It's not going to happen. So we need to go right.
We will have to evolve a bit now, won't we?
Exactly.
They don't have a choice, really. So yeah, I think that's it for this week. I mean,
a happy one.
Yeah, another joyous one. We can do it all again, can't we, on Saturday when we're in the ground, I guess. But yeah, thanks Matt, for making a welcome return. I'm sure we'll we'll get you on again at some point. But thank you for listening. I know at the moment it's not it's not maybe the most enjoyable, but at the same time we have to front up and have these discussions. And I will throw down the gauntlet to those at the club. They should be doing exactly the same thing, because we're not going to get anywhere if you don't. So thank you for listening. And next time we record, the transfer window will have shut and we can have another discussion, hopefully a better one, but we will see. But bye for now.